I've always believed that the truest acts of kindness are the ones no one knows about. That's why, on that crisp autumn morning, I slipped an envelope containing a check for $50,000 under the door of Principal Garcia's office before anyone arrived at Cedar Grove High School. The money represented 15 years of careful saving, originally meant for a cabin by Lake Erie that I dreamed about since my first year of teaching English here. But dreams change, needs change, and the sight of my students crowding around our library's outdated computers and damaged books changed something in me. "Jack Miller, you're in early today," said Marge, our administrative assistant, as she caught me walking away from the principal's office. Her gray hair was pulled back in her usual neat bun, and she peered at me over reading glasses that perpetually hung from a beaded chain around her neck. "Just dropping off some lesson plans," I lied, feeling my cheeks flush. At 42, I was a terrible liar, but Marge just nodded and continued sorting through the morning mail. Outside, Cedar Grove was waking up. The Ohio morning was cool enough for a light jacket, and golden leaves from the maple trees lining Washington Street danced across the sidewalk. This town of 12,000 souls was the only place I'd ever taught, the kind of place where everyone knew your business, which is exactly why I wanted my donation to remain anonymous. "Morning, Mr. Miller." A cheerful voice pulled me from my thoughts. It was Emma Chun, one of my AP English students, walking to school with her younger brother. "Are we still discussing The Great Gatsby today?" "Sure are," I replied, falling into step beside them. "What did you think about Gatsby's pursuit of wealth and status?" "I think he was trying to buy happiness," Emma said thoughtfully. "But it doesn't work that way, does it?" I smiled. "That's exactly what we'll be talking about." Little did I know how relevant that conversation would become. By lunchtime, the news of the anonymous donation had spread through the school like wildfire. I sat in the teacher's lounge, pretending to grade papers while eavesdropping on my colleagues. $50,000, exclaimed Harriet Johnson, the mathematics teacher. "Can you believe it? Principal Garcia says it's enough to completely renovate the library, get new computers, and update the entire collection." "Any idea who it could be?" asked Doug Peterson, who taught biology and coached the basketball team. "Someone who cares about these kids," said Harriet. "That's all that matters." I took a bite of my sandwich to hide my smile. The warm feeling in my chest was worth more than any recognition could have been. That afternoon, my senior class was more animated than usual. They were already discussing what the library renovation would mean for them. "Mr. Miller, did you hear about the donation?" asked Tyler Washington, a bright kid who worked evenings at his family's hardware store. "I did," I said, setting down my copy of Fitzgerald. "What do you think about it?" "I think whoever did it didn't want attention," said Zoe Ramirez from the back row. "That's kind of cool, you know? Like, doing something good just because it's good." I nodded, feeling a swell of pride. Not for my act, but for my students' insight. 3 days later, I was grading papers at my kitchen table when my phone rang. The modest two-bedroom house I'd called home for the past decade was quiet except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock I'd inherited from my father. "Jack, it's Elena Garcia," said the principal, her voice tinged with excitement. "I need to speak with you. It's about the donation." My heart skipped. "What about it?" "I think I know it was you," she said gently. "The bank called to verify some details, and they mentioned that the account holder was a teacher." I closed my eyes and sighed. "Elena, I'd really prefer." I know. You want it to remain anonymous, and I'll respect that," she assured me. "But I couldn't let this pass without thanking you personally. What you've done for our students, it's extraordinary." I felt my throat tighten. They deserve it. The school board wants to make an announcement. Maybe have a small ceremony. "No," I said firmly. "Please, Elena. No ceremonies, no announcements. That's not why I did this." There was a pause on the line. Okay, Jack, I understand. After hanging up, I walked to my living room window. Cedar Grove's main street was visible in the distance, the streetlights just beginning to come on as dusk settled over the town. I thought about my students and how a renovated library might open doors for them. Doors that led far beyond our small corner of Ohio. I smiled to myself, content with the knowledge that sometimes the most meaningful changes happen quietly, without fanfare or recognition. What I didn't know then was that my simple act of generosity was about to collide with someone else's need for applause, setting in motion events that would shake our little town to its core. Because in Cedar Grove, like anywhere else, no good deed goes unnoticed forever. Richard Davenport's mansion sat on Oakview Hill, overlooking Cedar Grove like a crown jewel. From my classroom window, I could see its white columns gleaming in the morning sun, a daily reminder of the town's most prominent resident. I was erasing the whiteboard after my last class when Principal Garcia appeared at my door, her expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Jack, you won't believe who just called the school," she said, lowering her voice despite the empty classroom. Richard Davenport himself. I set down the eraser. "What did he want?" "He's heard about our anonymous donation." She leaned against a desk. Somehow, the story made it to the Cedar Grove Tribune. Small mention, back page, but Davenport noticed. I finished, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "He's coming tomorrow. Wants to meet with the school board." She hesitated. "Jack, he's talking about making his own donation. A bigger one." I forced a smile. "That's great news, right?" Elena sighed. "He's insisting on a proper ceremony. Press coverage. The works." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my kitchen window, a mug of chamomile tea cooling in my hands, staring at the distant lights of Davenport's mansion. Everyone in Cedar Grove knew Richard Davenport's pattern. Charitable donations followed by tax write-offs, newspaper photos, and naming rights. The next morning, the school parking lot featured an unfamiliar sight. A gleaming black Range Rover with vanity plates that read DVNPRT1. I slipped in through the side entrance, avoiding the main office where I could hear Davenport's booming voice. $100,000, he was saying. Double the anonymous donation. And all I ask is that the new library bear the Davenport name. Later, Marge caught me in the copy room. "You heard?" she whispered. I nodded. "The board accepted his offer," she continued. "Ceremony next Friday. He's invited the mayor, the press, everyone. That's good for the students," I managed, focusing on collating my handouts. "Is it?" Marge asked, her eyes knowing. "You know, Jack, some people give because they care. Others give because they want to be seen caring." As I walked back to my classroom, I spotted Emma Chun by her locker. "Mr. Miller," she called, waving a copy of the Cedar Grove Tribune. "Did you see? They're renaming the library after Mr. Davenport." I glanced at the headline. "Local businessman pledges $100,000 to school library." Below it, a quote from Davenport. When I heard about the anonymous donation, I knew I had to step up. That's what leadership is, showing others how to give back. "What do you think about that?" I asked Emma. She frowned slightly. "It's good that we're getting more money for the library, but what? I liked that someone cared enough to give without needing credit," she said. "It seemed more real, you know?" I nodded, feeling a small surge of vindication. "I know exactly what you mean, Emma." As I continued to my classroom, I didn't realize that Richard Davenport's grand gesture was about to unravel in ways none of us could have anticipated, and that the quiet truth would soon speak louder than all his money ever could. The day of the ceremony arrived with perfect weather, sunny and mild, as if even nature wanted to roll out the red carpet for Richard Davenport. The school courtyard had been transformed with a temporary stage, chairs arranged in neat rows, and a large cloth covering what would soon be unveiled as the Davenport Learning Center plaque. I stood at the back of the crowd, watching as Davenport worked the room, shaking hands with board members and posing for photos with the mayor. His tailored suit probably cost more than my monthly salary. Quite the spectacle, isn't it? I turned to find Sarah Reynolds beside me, notebook in hand. I recognized her from her byline in the Tribune. She'd been writing increasingly probing articles about local business dealings. "It's not about the spectacle," I said. "It's about the students." Sarah studied me curiously. "Is that why you donated anonymously, Mr. Miller?" My blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." She smiled knowingly. "Don't worry. Your secret's safe with me. But his?" She nodded toward Davenport. "Not so much." Before I could respond, Principal Garcia was at the microphone, welcoming everyone and thanking our generous benefactor. Davenport stepped onto the stage to thunderous applause, his smile gleaming as bright as the gold cufflinks on his wrists. "When I see a need in our community," he began, voice projecting perfectly without the microphone, "I believe it's my duty to meet it. That's why today I'm proud to." "Excuse me, Mr. Davenport." Sarah's voice cut through the crowd as she stepped forward. "Would you care to comment on documents showing that your charitable foundation has been used to hide profits from your development company's overseas accounts?" A hushed gasp rippled through the audience. "This is hardly the time or place," Davenport said, his smile faltering. "Neither is the IRS investigation into your last 3 charitable donations," Sarah continued, holding up a folder, "including documentation showing that this current donation comes from funds already under federal scrutiny." The silence was deafening. Davenport's face flushed crimson. "These allegations are completely unfounded," he sputtered. But the damage was done. Camera phones were raised, recording his discomfort. "What about the real donor?" someone called out. "The anonymous one?" All eyes scanned the crowd. Principal Garcia caught my gaze, a question in her eyes. I gave her the slightest nod. She approached the microphone. "The original donation came from someone who has given this school community far more than money over the years," she said. "Mr. Jack Miller, would you please join me?" My legs felt like lead as I walked to the stage, aware of my students' wide eyes following me. I hadn't wanted this attention, but something about standing in the shadow of Davenport's crumbling facade felt necessary. "Jack has been teaching at Cedar Grove for 15 years, Elena continued. "The money he donated represented his personal savings, not a tax write-off, not a publicity stunt, but a genuine investment in our students' futures." The applause that followed was different from what Davenport had received. It was warm, authentic, punctuated by cheers from my students. "Mr. Miller," Sarah approached with her recorder, "why did you choose to remain anonymous?" I looked out at the faces watching me. My colleagues, my students, my community. "Because education isn't about recognition," I said simply. "It's about lighting paths for others, even when no one sees who's holding the torch." In the weeks that followed, the story unraveled quickly. Sarah's investigative piece ran on the front page of the Tribune, detailing Davenport's financial schemes. His donation was returned, his reputation in shambles. The library renovation proceeded with my original donation, supplemented by something unexpected. Dozens of small contributions from community members, parents, and even former students who had read the story. The plaque, when finally installed, read simply, "Cedar Grove Library. Built by community, for community." Emma Chun found me after class on the day the renovated library reopened. "Mr. Miller," she said, "remember when we talked about Gatsby? About how you can't buy happiness?" I nodded. "I think what happened proves something else," she continued. "You can't buy respect either. That has to be earned." As she walked away, I realized that the greatest lesson hadn't come from any book on our new shelves, but from what my students had witnessed. That true wealth isn't measured by what you have, but by what you give and why you give it. In Cedar Grove, that was a lesson none of us would soon forget.